and gentlemen, to the Catholic Education Foundation podcast number 50. So we had to pull out all the stops for this one. This podcast will feature Paul Humphrey, Chief of the Louisville Metro Police Department, along with Catholic Education Foundation President Rich Lecklider. Gentlemen,
thanks for having me.
Welcome to podcast number 50. It's a big one, Rich.
Yeah, good to have the chief with us today.
It is good to have the chief with us. What an honor, actually, to have you on the show. So thank you and welcome, Chief. Let's start with your family. You come from a family of public servants. Your father, your mother, your sister. Tell us about them and their contributions to our community.
Yeah, actually, it started with my grandfather.
Okay.
Way back in the day. So my grandfather started with the old LPD.
Yeah.
Back in 1939.
Yeah.
And so he did a few years as an officer and then later became a judge, went through University of Louisville Law School. But my sister retired as deputy chief here with LMPD. She started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she actually came back in 2020 when we had a bunch of turnover. She came back and was the interim chief while the city did a national search for a permanent chief. So pretty fortunate to follow in the footsteps and be a brother-sister combination of chiefs.
Yeah.
You're not going to find that.
No, you're not.
Places. That's pretty cool.
That is
pretty
cool.
awesome. And it's funny because my entire career, I was always Vet's little brother. and so it was like every time I got a promotion, it was like, oh, I achieved something. All right, Vet's little brother.
Right.
And so finally she had been retired for a few years and finally people knew my first name. I was Paul all of a sudden.
Right.
And then she comes back and it's like, can't have anything. But no, it's been awesome. That's a legacy to live up to. And then my mother was a dispatcher for over 30 years. And my father worked for the state, both for the Attorney General's office and then later for alcoholic beverage control. So
Man, it's absolutely a family affair.
yeah, couldn't get too far away from it.
No, it's a great legacy.
It is a great legacy.
Great intergenerational.
And listen, so my wife has these little coins that she passes out to police officers and firefighters, and it's just, it's such an important, noble profession, and you just don't get the praise you need. I mean, people really need to give police officers more credit because it's a dangerous job that we desperately need.
Well, I appreciate that. It's a lot of fun too. So we enjoy the excitement. I don't get to do too much anymore. I sit behind a desk and I wear this as just pretending to play the part. But I miss the days of being out there on the street and getting to have fun and interact with people.
All right, let's go back to the early days. You're a lifelong Louisvillian. Tell us about kind of growing up in Louisville.
So I grew up in a neighborhood called Fort Hill.
Okay.
Very small neighborhood. It's kind of sandwiched in between Shelby Park and Germantown over in that area. Went to St. Elizabeth, which later became St. Rose. So spent a lot of time at Check's Cafe and what used to be Heinzman's Bakery down there. But now is Monic Brewer.
Yep.
So so it was great. Played baseball at Germantown Ball, stuff like that. And then ultimately, a lot of my family grew up in the same neighborhood too. But like I said, I went to St. Elizabeth and ultimately ended up at St. X.
Right.
So didn't fall far from the tree. My father and my uncle were graduates of St. X.
Okay.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Oh, yeah. So
did not know that.
I'm a legacy. My father was a class of 1962. So he was actually the first graduating class of the new building.
In the new building.
Nice.
Yeah, it opened in 61. Exactly.
Yeah, so he went 3 years down on Broadway.
Oh, all right.
So I heard a lot of stories about how it used to be.
Yeah.
Back in the old days.
Yeah. So
So you grew up in the St. X neighborhood, I guess, right? Kind of in that area?
Yep. Spent a lot of time over there. George Rogers Park is where we had all our family reunions.
Yeah,
and
he's
stuff,
super close to St. X where he grew up. Sure. Right in Germantown.
I will listen. So again, Rich, this is a theme here of having St. X grads on. Again, we're all three St. X grads. Paul, tell us about your experience at St. X. As long as, and along with some of your favorite memories, maybe your favorite teachers, what comes to mind?
Well, I'll tell you, my St. X experience was interesting because I was born a St. X kid, even though my dad gave me an option to go anywhere else and I shadowed at Trinity. I don't think I ever considered anything but St. X. I was that kid that was at all the St. X functions and games when I was a little kid. But I struggled at St. X. I struggled massively at St. X. And this is part of what I've talked about with some of the students over there is my St. X experience was not great, especially for the first, I'd say 2.5, 3
Academically?
Oh, everything.
Behaviorally?
No, I was a good kid. I never got in trouble.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I got one jug
Yeah. I had one jug my whole career too.
Actually, I had more than one.
I had more. I had more.
I have one. Mine wasn't my fault.
It wasn't until my senior year where I got a jug, but I think I ended up getting like 6 in one day. But anyway, that's
okay. Yeah.
Yep. So,
So were you prepared when you went to St. X or no?
So coming from St. Elizabeth, St. Rose, smaller school, working class, it was a culture shock to go to St. X.
So it was so much bigger.
So much bigger. The culture gap of going from a poor / middle class neighborhood to St. X and realizing that, like, whoa, hold on, this is completely different from anything I know. It was rough for me, and plus, I went from being kind of a standout athlete, a popular kid, to in a class of 28 students at St. Elizabeth, to oh my gosh, this is 400 kids in my class.
Oh yeah.
Freshman year, I was one of, I think, only 7 black kids in my class, with only graduating 2. So it was a culture shock to me. And, you know, as much as I loved St. X and the concept, I felt a little bit isolated. I had some great friends there. And if it hadn't been for some of those guys, I would have, I don't know if I'd have made it through.
Sure.
So I struggled academically. I struggled socially. I almost flunked out of St. X. I had some.
Who were some of the people that helped you along the way?
Well, that was exactly it. Is I had some great mentors and some great teachers, as well as great friends who really helped me get through that. And it wasn't until probably, you know, Christmas break-ish of my senior year where I realized, whoa, hold on. I've got this great opportunity here. And I wish that I had the perspective to appreciate that earlier.
A few years earlier.
Oh my gosh. I can't imagine, you know, how different things might be if I'd appreciated that my freshman or sophomore year. But people like Coach Krasik, I never had Coach Krasik as a teacher, but he coached me in football. He coached me in wrestling.
Okay.
I mean, and he just constantly pushed me, and it didn't matter, you know, what level you were at. You could be a starter. You could be a nobody. You could be smart. You could be dumb.
Yep.
It didn't matter. He was the type of guy, and many of the teachers and coaches are this way. He was the type of guy that was going to push you to be the best version of you.
Yeah.
So if the best version of you is a C, you damn well better get a C.
Right.
If the best version of you is an A+, you better be getting an A+.
Right.
If you can get in one play a game, that better be your best play. And so it didn't matter what your level was. He wanted to see you succeed at your level. And it was so many teachers like that at St. X. And then the friends and the camaraderie.
Yeah.
Like,
the brotherhood.
Like, it sounds, if you're outside of that, it sounds like a joke. It sounds like, you know, fraternity, but it's not. It is. It is something different that
it's real.
For a lifetime.
Oh yeah.
True.
I mean, I still have friends in my day-to-day life that I talk to every day that I went to St. X with.
Yeah, today was a good example. I mean, you can see someone you only graduated with, you hadn't seen them since then, but it's like it was that senior day on graduation. I mean, it's that brotherhood is always going to be there, and it's very special. And I think that goes to all kind of these Catholic schools, right, Rich? I mean, whether you got the same thing if you're going to go to Assumption or Sacred Heart or Trinity or DeSales, they all had that sense of brotherhood. But, you know, St. X is certainly special, but it's the Catholic schools that really it's what's doing it.
Yeah, I've said this a million times before, and it's so true in my life. People that were 10 years ahead of me at St. X and 10 years behind me, I mean, that was what guided me in my business career.
That's right.
In my life.
That's right.
I can name all these people that I came along the way, if you will.
Yeah.
In one way or another, that went to St. X. We sort of this instant bond.
That's right.
And particularly in business. And it was super helpful to me for decades. So it's very real, Chief. It's super real. I've seen it in my own kids. 3 boys that went there. Same thing again. It's very powerful. Not just at St. X, to your point, T, but everywhere.
It's funny you say that, because I think we can make friends anywhere. I still keep up with my friends from grade school. I've probably texted 2 or 3 people from St. Elizabeth, St. Rose this past week.
Yeah.
But the thing that is unique about St. X, and this is not to disparage public schools, but I think the Catholic school system does give you a unique connection to people, is that you walk into a room, and like you said, it doesn't matter whether you graduated in 1979 or 2009. There is a connection where where I've been afforded opportunities and welcomed into rooms that my own credibility has been bolstered walking into that room, and people bring you into things that you otherwise wouldn't be exposed to. And that's the magic of education, period. Is education is about exposing people to opportunities. And, this country is not, we talk about the hope of this country and the opportunity that's in this country. This country is not devoid of opportunity.
That's right.
But many people never have the access to that opportunity, or they never know that it's available to them. And that's where people like me are so fortunate, even though I grew up in a St. X family. It wasn't anything new to me, but it exposed me to so many things that many of the people that I grew up with never knew was available to them.
That's right.
Never had access to it. I mean, it's really an amazing thing what education does.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Well, let's talk about Catholic faith too. So how has not only your Catholic education, but your Catholic faith impacted your life?
Well, I'm a cradle Catholic, born and raised, baptized before I could walk probably. And so growing up in that, I expressed my faith through service. I mean, that's what my family does, is take care of other people. But, I was one of those kids that the church was actually my babysitter. It was back before there was before school care, couldn't drop kids off early. Well, my parents both worked early. So we got dropped off at mass before we went to church.
Oh, there you go.
Before we went to school, me and my sister, then we would walk over. So I went to church 6 days a week.
Wow. Okay.
I still carry a single decade rosary in my pocket. And so, but faith is, it's individualized, but it is part of being part of the institution.
Right.
It is knowing that, that's one of the things about the Catholic Church is I can go to a Catholic church in Louisville, I can go to a Catholic church in New York, or wherever I go in the world, and I am going to get the same thing. I know what the ritual will be. I know what will be expressed. And that's one of the amazing things about the Catholic Church is that's standardization, but that universality of it gives a comfort where you're always feeling welcome no matter where you go.
That's really well said.
Yep, it is.
All right, Chief, when did you first get interested in law enforcement? Did that start when you attended U of L?
Well, I've obviously always
because you grew up in it,
but that wasn't necessarily my initial plan. I did work for the University Police just as a student over at U of L, but that was a job that wasn't necessarily my calling at that time. My plan was to go to law school, then become a cop, and you could retire after 20 years. So I was like, hey, I'll go to law school, become a cop, retire for 20 years, and be a lawyer. And so I decided to do that in reverse because life happens. And so ended up getting on. I became a counselor at Brookline.
Oh, really?
For about a year after graduating, and then ended up while I was in the hiring process for the police department. And so pretty much almost straight out of college, but a year break.
All right. So so it says here you joined the police department in 2006. Which was shortly after the merger of the city and the county governments. Yep. Tell us about the beginnings there, because obviously that's been an interesting deal ever since the merger. But you were right there, right when it started, correct?
Oh yeah, and it's a completely different place now.
Okay.
Actually, Josh Hash, who came in with me, he was in the first merged recruit class between the city and the county.
Okay.
And so, coming in 2006, just 3 years after merger, it still really was two separate police departments, in a large part. And so there was a different culture depending on where you went in the police department. If you went out to the old county divisions versus the city divisions, and I grew up a city kid. Like all the cops that I knew growing up were city cops. My sister was on the city police. My mom worked for the city police. And so that's what I always knew about policing. And so, merging those two cultures, I would say it took a lot of time within the police department.
For sure.
You are taking two 500 plus person organizations and that do things completely differently. And let's be honest, didn't very much like each other.
Right.
And so it really has taken time to develop into one organization.
Interesting.
And,
okay.
When you look at our some of our stuff, we talk about one metro, one mission. That's
Right.
what that's about is that this isn't a city county divide. We are one at this point. We are all focused on the same thing, and that's keeping the city of Louisville safe.
In your opinion, it wouldn't do us good to undo that at this point, right?
Oh, I think that would be a horrible decision. I think the amount of difficulty that would not be worthwhile.
Okay, I completely agree. We've had actually some guests who feel like that undoing that may be good for business and whatnot. But I've always been on the other side, and I would tend to agree with you.
Yeah, I think when you can pool resources, and ultimately what everyone knows is that the economic driver for the state of Kentucky is the city of Louisville.
Right.
And so the more resources, the more you can bring to the city of Louisville, I think the better off it is for the state of Kentucky overall. And I understand some people's frustration with some of the things that happen, but there are benefits to being part of a larger city that you don't have. And so
Sure.
while we want to escape some of those problems and have a small town mentality, that's not the reality that we live in.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. All right, Chief. So during your career, you've touched a lot of things across the department. I mean, there's a whole laundry list here. So patrol officer, housing authority, you worked internal affairs. There's one that I'm interested in the most here is you became the SWAT team commander. Talk about kind of your career progression and how it prepared you for the role that you sit in today.
So I love every place that I worked, but SWAT was a unique thing. I spent about 9.5 years on the SWAT team. I wish I'd made it to 10, but got promoted off the team at 9.5.
Got it.
But I would say that was fundamentally the thing that shaped me the most. It really has defined my career, not just the experiences that I had as far as the type of operations and things we did, but the culture of the team was one that was built around feedback and improvement.
Okay.
And so there was no room for mistakes that did not get called out. And so every operation that we went on, we debriefed afterwards. And so it didn't matter if we stood around with the command staff after a situation and they gave us pats on the back and said, good job. We met separately by ourselves and we would tear that apart and say, hey, this is how we could have done things better. This is what we messed up. This is what we need to fix. And so that became the norm for us, kind of like a sports culture.
Yep.
You're expecting to get some feedback from the coach, win, lose, or draw,
Right.
that you're going to find some way to improve.
Right.
And that is what we need in policing as a profession. We are very good as a profession at telling other people what to do. I mean, that is basically our job. Is you broke the rules, I'm going to enforce them.
Makes sense.
Internally, we are not always that great at that.
Okay.
We criticize each other, but it's that next step of criticism of let's make this constructive criticism.
Right.
Let's critique this. Let's figure out why it went wrong, how it went wrong, and what we're going to do to make it.
Yeah, kind of the professional development piece of it.
100%. And so we have to change that culture across the profession into one that's coaching based, that's improvement based, and stop being so afraid of liability that if we call out our mistakes, we're pointing out our liabilities. And I think that's historically part of what has made people in this profession hesitant to accept critique is they don't want to accept liability. And when in fact, this is how I show you that I care about you, is that I'm pushing you to be the best version of you, kind of what I talked about with Coach K earlier.
Yeah.
Is that I want you to succeed. Even if you did well, you can do better. And I'm showing you that I care about you by pushing you to do even better than you are today.
Rich seems like the right guy to have as our chief of police.
Absolutely. And as we've done many of these podcasts and interviewed some really great folks. And what continues to amaze me in this community is how many leaders we have across public service, government, industry, medicine, the professions. How many of those folks had some experience either in a Catholic school or in particular St. X High School?
That's right.
It really defines sort of the fabric of this community, and that's why at the foundation why we think that's so important that people have access to it.
So there's something else here, Chief, I want to ask you about. In 2022, you established the LMPD Accountability and Improvement Bureau, which led to the opening of the Summit Wellness Center. Tell us about the center and its importance to you.
That's absolutely an amazing place, and I wish I could take credit for it. But the only thing we've ever done alone is have the start of a good idea.
Got it.
And that's really what that was. You know, there were all these calls for police reform across the country, which we can get in a whole debate about what reform means.
Sure.
It's not a new thing. We've always been in the process of trying to find the next iteration of how to do this thing better. But it really was just an idea that if we're going to do police reform, we have to show the people that work here, the officers, the professional staff, that their agency, their command staff, their city actually cares about them. Because I can tell you, frankly, that was not the feeling that we got as employees at the time, is that we often felt like a number. And so if we're going to start a process of reform, it needs to start with caring about and supporting the people that are doing the actual work.
Yeah.
I don't do police work, right? I love police work, but I've promoted myself out of the fun part of it.
Right.
So how am I going to make you better at doing your job that you have accepted the challenge to do?
Makes sense.
And so that's what that was built around. And people like Brian Edlin and Rebecca Grignon-Reeker over at the Police Foundation, they took that idea and they ran with it. And they turned it into this. It's not just something on paper or something that's neat to talk about how we support employee wellness. They really turned it into this 5-pillar thing where it supports the holistic person, not just Paul is the employee or Paul is the cop. Let's see how fast we can turn him over and get him back out the door. But really, how can we make sure that Paul, the person, is taken care of physically, mentally, spiritually, and financially? It's simple things like we hire 21 and 22-year-olds. I was 22 years old when I got on the police department. I had $480 in my bank account.
Yeah, you're still figuring things out big time.
Right. And so when you're dealing with young people in their career, simple things like how to manage a loan, how to buy a house, how to make sure that you don't incur too much debt too early on.
Yep.
How to plan for retirement. Those are important things.
Sure.
And so having all of those things in one place, I think, is a game changer for us. And it's become a national model.
Oh, that's awesome. What a cool thing. Rich, I'm curious. Let's talk about how the foundation lends a hand to help our first responders in this community.
Yeah, a good question. We had we applied for a grant from the Novak Family Foundation here in Louisville. And it revolved around active military, retired military, and first responders. How do you support them? We didn't really know the answer to that. We support a lot of people, but we had to dig into the detail to figure that out. And interestingly enough, of the 3,700 kids that we supported, this is a year ago, almost 600 of those kids had one or two parents in the household that fit that criteria: a cop, a nurse, active military, retired military, any kind of first responder family. So that, in the awards, the scholarships that went to those kids was almost $1 million. So out of the $8 million of scholarships that we put out there in the community, almost $1 million of that went to families that were essentially first responders. So that was sort of new news to me. I didn't know
I was going to say,
I was super excited about it. And I'm sure we'll do more next year. And that's when we give that kind of opportunity, that kind of hand up to folks whose parents are doing that kind of hard work, we should do a whole lot more of it. So I'm proud of it.
That's awesome. Okay, Chief, during the Department of Justice investigation of LMPD a few years ago, what was your role then, and how did you participate in the negotiation of the consent decree?
So all of that kind of fell under me to coordinate as far as the department.
So it did fall under you to coordinate.
Yeah, and so I managed the investigation along with a couple other people, and then I took over when negotiations started. I was the lead negotiator for the police side, and then we had a counterpart for the rest of the city. And then in the middle of those negotiations is when I became chief. So now Deputy Chief Emily McKinley, who was my number 2 in all of that stuff, she stepped in and became the lead negotiator. And really it was this process of what is the best way to do this? So we went all around the country. We made contacts with all kinds of people, not just cities that had consent decrees, but cities that we saw as, hey, you do this thing well, how do you do that? And then could we bring that back to Louisville? Should we do it differently? What are the pitfalls? What are the failures? And so by the time we got to the point of negotiations, we had already established a lot of the things that they were going to be asking us to do.
Interesting.
And so we were able to really form those negotiations around this product that has already learned the lessons from everyone else. And so that was really very helpful. And we were farther along down the road. We were probably 2 or 3 years beyond what any other city who had been through that was when by the time we entered
I'm
negotiations.
sure you learned an incredible amount during that whole thing.
Oh, I became a jailhouse lawyer when it came,
I bet.
it came to that type of stuff. It was an education for sure.
Yeah, and not all great, but I'm sure that was very well.
Yeah, job well done.
Yeah,
job well done.
no doubt.
That it was necessary to go through that for lots of different reasons. But what has come from it, was really self-started, if you will, by the
Absolutely.
department itself. That speaks volumes, I think.
And that's one of the things from a leadership standpoint that I've learned along the way is that there's all these opportunities to deflect and place blame or give responsibility to something else. So it can be very easy for us to say we have to do this because the DOJ says we have to do it, or we have to do this because the mayor's office says we have to do it. No, we run this department, and we are making decisions for the officers, for the community that's the best for them. And we own those decisions. We own it good, bad, ugly, and different. And so we want officers to know that we have their best interests in mind when we're asking them to do something. And it's not just because some other entity told us we have to.
That's amazing. All right, so in September 2024, you were sworn in as the police chief in the post-merger era to be from Louisville and to build your entire police career here. Pretty awesome. How proud does that make you feel?
Well, I mean, it is pretty awesome. And, full disclosure, it was not my plan. Was
it never a goal?
Well, being a chief became a goal, but I assumed that wouldn't happen here just because of the way timing was and stuff. I can retire in September. And so I just thought, when we had the 2 previous chiefs before me, I thought, well, that's my time.
Yeah.
If I become a chief, I never even thought about becoming a chief until I was an assistant chief.
Gotcha.
So I'd have spent my entire career in SWAT if I had my druthers. But so by the time I got to that point, I honestly I was really on the fence when everything happened, and spent some time just riding the street with officers. And when you sit in an office every day, when you sit in negotiations with the Department of Justice and you do that type of stuff, you can lose some of that passion because that's not the work I signed up for. I signed up to be a cop.
Right.
Like I signed up to go out here and serve people by getting in fights and foot chases and responding to car accidents and helping people out. I didn't sign up to sit behind a desk. And so I'm kind of in that time when the mayor gave me some time to think about it and made me the interim. I went out and I rode around with some officers, and it reminded me like why I'm doing this, and that I can be the chief that they want. I can remember what it was like to be on the streets here in Louisville, talking to people that live in Louisville, being part of Louisville, and try to be the chief that everybody here needs, whether it's the officers, whether it's community, business. Like this is my home. And so I think it's a unique position to be in for the city. And so I look at it as I'm very fortunate to have gotten this position, particularly when I got it. It's pretty amazing.
Rich, when you think about Chief Humphrey here, there's a lot of common themes: stability, continuity, accountability, transparency, which is something that we certainly needed, performance improvement, among others. Chief, talk about your leadership and culture and how it plays into your vision for the department.
I try to be very transparent from the standpoint of I know 100% that every decision that I make is not going to be right, and that's fine. I am going to mess up, but I also understand that there is a value in being honest about that. That people will give you the grace to make mistakes if they can trust that you're telling them the truth about it.
Right.
And so that's and I've discovered that has really worked. People value the fact that when somebody from LMPD now gets up and says something, they feel like they're telling them the truth. Might not agree with it, might not like it. And then I try to remember that for officers. officers receive so many orders and so many things that get pushed down to them. You know, by the time something comes from me to an officer, it's going through 8, 9, 10 layers.
Right.
And I got to remember that they're the recipient of all of this.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that have to do the work.
Yeah.
Give them a little bit of grace too, right? This is a tough job.
Yeah.
And I'm asking them to do things where they're going to have to make split-second decisions that are going to affect them for the rest of their lives and might be scrutinized heavily.
Yep.
Now, I get to replay in slow motion, frame by frame.
Yep.
Whereas they had a half a second to make that decision. And it's pretty awesome that they still go out there and make those decisions.
Yeah.
We don't get it right all the time, but we get it right 99% of the time. And so let's figure out how to
Amen.
take that 99% of the time and make that the standard. How do we make sure that that's repeatable? We can do it every time. And then how do we take that 1% of the time when we do mess up and learn from it and be able to make that employee better afterwards?
Well said. You got me fired up here, Chief. I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
This is a fun job, and I think that's what was lost in the previous 4, 5, 6 years, is that this is like, there are TV shows made about our job.
That's right.
Right?
Countless.
Like, this is, news stations show up to talk about what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, officers should be proud of that. They should be able to go out there and have fun and know that they're going to get supported. Yes, this is a very serious job, and I don't mean to make light of it, but it's okay to enjoy your job.
Amen.
It's okay to celebrate that.
It's okay to be good at it.
100%. And be proud that you're good at it.
That's right. Man, I'm fired up. This is awesome. All right. So you may have hit on a couple of these, but I'd like to maybe rehash some if so. And if not, what are the major initiatives that you've established for LMPD, and how would you assess your progress since you became its leader?
You talk about major initiatives, we can talk about some things like establishing a performance review board, and that's a group of kind of subject matter experts internal to the police department, where when we have critical incidents, we have seminal events, they come together and they review that from a performance base. Whereas we've always reviewed those events from an administrative basis. Did you follow policy? Did you do anything wrong?
Right.
From a criminal investigation standpoint, is there any criminal activity here or behavior on behalf of the officer? But we never took those events and looked at them of, hey, this officer performed really well. Did they perform well because they're exceptional? Which, that's great. Rich is outstanding. He did a good job. But did Rich do that because he happens to be exceptional and was able to draw on his individual experience? Mm-hmm. Or did Rich perform well because the policy, the training, the equipment, the leadership guided him that way and supported that?
Yeah.
And if it was because it just happened to be Rich that showed up, and if Paul had showed up, he would not have performed to that level.
Okay.
We need to make sure that Rich's standard is all of our standard. So how do we make sure that happens? And so there's simple things like that.
It's fantastic.
That turning this into a positive review organization, a critique organization, and that really is the culture, is how do you have those small conversations on a day-to-day basis of, how am I going to make you better? How can we improve? Because at the point that it comes that Rich is really messed up and we have to have that tough conversation, Rich knows that I care about him.
Right.
And so I'm not just coming to Rich because I want to get on Rich.
Right.
I'm coming to him because I care about making him better. And as a leader, I think we often shy away from difficult conversations because we feel somewhere in our heart that we're responsible for our employee that messed up. And so when you've taken all those steps to try to improve Rich over time, if Rich fails and this is no longer the job for him, you can rest comfortably knowing that as a leader, you did everything you could for Rich. Mm-hmm. And we're just going to have to move Rich along at this point. And so let's find where Rich can be successful, whether it's a different part of this agency or whether it's working somewhere else. And so it helps all along the way. And it's those little incremental improvements that officers make every day when they're holding themselves accountable to that high standard that prevents those real big issues that come up.
Because you ran, at one point in your career, you ran the training division, yes?
I did.
So is that where a lot of this developed within you, is actually putting together a program within the training division to improve that, or how did that happen?
So that training is where it starts for the average officer, right? That's where they're going to be introduced to that culture. But I think Chief Conrad at the time chose me to be over the training division because I'd already developed that. I'd already been exposed to that through my years on the SWAT team, where particularly I think I got on the SWAT team when I had 3.5 years on or something like that. And I'm on the team with guys that they've been on the team for 15 years. Right. And so they had no problem saying, hey, look, Rook, look, young man, you got to do this better. And it just became normalized.
Yeah.
And I felt like, because we all understood the risk
Sure.
that was associated with what we were doing.
Yeah.
I actually think that being on the SWAT team, I felt safer on the SWAT team than I ever did on the street, because I had all these people.
Yeah, you had your team.
I had a team with me that were pushing themselves every day, and I saw it every day that they were putting that work in. And so how do we make sure that your average baseline officer who's coming out of the academy understands how to push themselves to be better, understands that it's okay to be critiqued? And I think that was instilled in me by all of those older guys on the SWAT team. That's what got me to that point to where I was chosen to lead the training.
Makes a ton of sense. Yeah.
Chief, if you don't have enough to do, you're also invested yourself in the community through some great Catholic organizations, if nothing else. You've served on the board of directors at St. X. You're a former board member at the Catholic Charities of Louisville, Community Catholic Center in the Portland neighborhood. How do you find time to do all this?
Well, I don't have nearly as much time as I used to, but I think, there's 24 hours in a day. You can sleep when you die. I think I would get bored if I wasn't doing something extra.
Amen. We share that commonality for sure.
Yeah. So, particularly when it comes to, if you notice, a lot of my extracurricular work has been surrounding Catholic education.
Yeah.
Because I really do feel like that is where we're exposed to those opportunities. That is the equalizer. There is so much talent out here in our city. And, when you live in some of these neighborhoods, you work in some of these neighborhoods, you recognize that, hey, these kids are as smart, their work ethic is as good as anybody, their family is as good as anybody. They just might not necessarily have the means or the exposure
That's right.
that others do. So if we can help with that and give them exposure to those opportunities, like, think about how much better the world would be, let alone the city, if so many of these kids had exposure to those opportunities.
That's right.
We would have had the longer lasting light bulb a long time ago.
That's right.
Right.
And so that's kind of the way that I look at service, is that, this is a form of service, but you've got to go the extra step about what you're passionate with.
Yeah, and we're trying, for our part at the foundation, if you kind of have a map of Louisville and you kind of Bardstown Road run north and south through the city, right? And if you look at where our families live that we're trying to give that opportunity to, 70% of them live either west or south of Bardstown Road. So that's that whole swath of J-Town, all the way over to Iroquois Park, Shively, PRP Valley Station, et al., to the west end, to Portland. That's where we're trying to make a difference in the city, because to your point, there's plenty of great families over there that want this opportunity to be in a Catholic school. They can't afford it.
That's right. That's right. And that's where the CEF comes in. That's where the foundation comes in.
That's what we're supposed to do. Exactly.
And there's and to Chief's point, there's a lot of people that just don't know that opportunity, that resource is there. And that's where we try to come in here, Rich, and try to help as many as possible. What was the numbers this past year?
Yeah, we had 3,700 kids. That's 2,500 families that we supported with $8.6 million in scholarships, the highest we ever did in our history.
Yeah,
So
phenomenal.
And again, for the most important thing about that for families is not the big numbers, but the fact that every student that applied who demonstrated a need got an award. We didn't say no to anybody.
Right.
And that's the 11th year in a row that, along with our donors, we're able to pull that off. So that's very empowering.
Rich, we got one of St. X's best serving our city here, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. And I'm proud of him. Paul, I thank you for your great service to this city, not only as the chief, but long before that in your service as a patrol officer and all the way up. And I think you serve as a really awesome example to a lot of young people in this community that are thinking about police work or some form of first responder work. And I think that example is exemplary, and I congratulate you on it. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that very much.
Absolutely.
When doing some research on this one, we talked to a lot of people involved in LMPD, and no one had an ounce of anything negative to say about you. And so,
because I paid them all.
well, I don't know about that. I think everybody's pretty glad you're in charge here.
Can I say something?
Please.
Like, I appreciate that that's the response that you got, but that's not true. Like, we are all fallible.
Amen.
I've made more than my fair share of people upset with me, and rightfully so. And that is another leadership lesson that I've learned, is that just because I did it didn't make it right. And it might have been allowed back then, and it's not now. And for me to hold you accountable to a standard that even I wasn't accountable to when I was on the street doesn't make me a hypocrite. It's showing that I care about you.
Yep.
And just because people make mistakes doesn't mean we cast them off forever.
Exactly.
I've made my fair share of mistakes. I've treated my fair share of people wrong. And I am very fortunate that I've been given the grace and the forgiveness and the second chance to try to achieve something after that. And I think that's what we have to think about when we're dealing with people, is that people aren't perfect. They're not expected to be perfect, but that doesn't mean that they can't do great things. And I've been very fortunate to be placed in a position where I've been able to do some pretty amazing stuff.
Well, that humility right there is what makes you right for that job. So thank you for that. Chief, you got an entire community pulling for you in your role as police chief. And behalf of this grateful city, thank you. And for the many great works in your life that serve as a reflection of your Catholic faith and your Catholic education, thank you for doing what you do. And Rich, as every Catholic school family in need now knows, at the Catholic Education Foundation,
The answer is yes.
Chief, thank you for being here.
Thank you.